How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Play-by-Play podcast. I'm your host, Diego Gallegos. This is episode number 41, where today we will be deep diving into the AFC East, previewing all the teams, looking at all of their offseason moves, and making a early season prediction for the 2024-2025 season. If you have not already, if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe. Go down, comment down below, like the video, and share it with your friends. And if you also have not already, please feel free to follow the podcast on all social medias: TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. The TikTok is going to be official play-by-play. The Instagram is play-by-play_podcast, and the Twitter is play-by-play_pod0. On all those social medias, you will get to see my instant reactions to all breaking news, Storybook Sundays, which is what we do every single week, going back in time into NFL and NBA history and looking at some certain stories that are likely very unknown to casual fans. I do want to mention that I am experiencing a little bit of a cough right now. So if I do take a break to cough, if I do take a break to get a drink of water, I'm sorry if the podcast is a little bit more choppy today. And I will also do my best to slow down my speech a little bit, talk a little bit more quiet. I was a little bit riled up last episode, but I think I am getting it under control. But without further ado, let's get into this episode today. The AFC East, a very interesting division to talk about, just seeing as it is one of the divisions that I feel as though right now is the most open. It is the division where you're kind of just waiting for somebody to grab the reins and be dominant in this division, because we have seen it prior to the last 4 years. The Patriots were so dominant with the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era. They pretty much terrorized this division ever since that duo got together. And until Tom Brady's departure in 2019, 2020, there really wasn't anybody that was able to challenge them for that AFC East title. The Dolphins, towards the end of Brady's career, gave him a little bit of trouble. I believe the Jets around the mid-2000s, early 2010s, they snuck in. I think they made it to the AFC Championship game in 2009. Could be wrong about that. But outside of that, there really hasn't been anybody else that has really shown type of dominance. And once Tom Brady did leave, there has been a little bit of a struggle of power between a couple of teams. Of course, between Miami and with Buffalo, with New England now dismantling. Miami showcasing their high-powered offense, and Buffalo cashing in with drafting Josh Allen mid in the first round in 2018 and building a great solid core around their young QB, trying to go and contend for a championship. And while, coming up a little bit short against the Kansas City Chiefs a few times, have made solid strides into finally cashing in and winning a Super Bowl. And now we find ourselves in 2024, where we could really see anybody go after this division title outside of New England, who we'll get to in a little bit. I really feel like it is a three-legged horse race between Miami, New York, and Buffalo. And I believe that all three teams are really going to have some very entertaining, very close, very high-scoring division game this year. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the subtle differences are that separates these teams and what creates these, what I always say is levels in the division, these tiers. How far apart will these tiers be? Will there be certain teams on the same tier as each other? Will there be huge gaps? Will there be smaller gaps? We're going to have to see. So with that, let's get into the record predictions for this division. AFC East early season record predictions here. I have the New York Jets coming in first place at 12-5. The Miami Dolphins are in second at 11-6. I have the Buffalo Bills coming in third at 8-8. And I have the New England Patriots not only as the last team in the AFC East, I have them as the last team in the NFL going at 1-16 total for this season. An absolute abysmal, nightmarish season for New England. But let's hop into this, starting with the New York Jets, who, like I mentioned, are going 12-5, have a major jump from last year's team. And I think that that's pretty warranted, seeing as with the type of additions that they have made from the previous year. I'm trying to look at all the notes that I got. So they improve off of a 7-10 season, 5+ games for them. And really, when you look at the key additions for them, you have Hassan Reddick, Mike Williams, both Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, Javon Kinlaw, and they also drafted Olumiyu Fashanu in the first round. Now, when it comes to this New York situation, they were in a really solid spot to be a playoff contender in the AFC the previous year. They had a top 3 defense in the entire league. They had likely the best secondary and the best cornerback in the league in Sauce Gardner. That passing game absolutely terrorized the entire league last year. And with adding in key pieces of pass rushing, such as Javon Kinlaw from San Francisco, such as Hassan Reddick, I think it is going to improve this defense even more, because now you're going to be pressuring the quarterback. You're going to be making the quarterback have to make quick decisions. And with that, if you are facing more inexperienced quarterbacks, they are going to be running into a lot of simple and easy mistakes that you can feed off of, that you can get turnovers off of, and that you can then turn into points, which, speaking of points, was something that was the Achilles heel for New York last year. Now, of course, this simply came down to an injury, a first game injury for the newly signed Aaron Rodgers, who tore his Achilles. We're going to have to see how he rebounds, how he improves as a quarterback this year. But following that Rodgers injury, to me, it was very clear that New York wasn't very prepared really at all for the incoming of Rodgers, that they did not have the offensive roster, the offensive talent that they really wanted to build around Aaron Rodgers, specifically on the offensive line. It was an absolutely terrible offensive line that gave up the fourth most sacks in the league. And they went ahead and they patched that up. Now, granted, they got some older guys. They got Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Tyron Smith, especially, you have to really be concerned with, just simply based off of his injury history. Has only played 13 games in the last 2 seasons. Morgan Moses definitely isn't getting any younger, and he has had not as much trouble, but a little bit of trouble with injury. But you bring those two in, you grab yourself some insurance by drafting Fashanu in the first round, and with his rawness, with his pure athletic ability, with his speed, I think that he could be somebody that, if not used right away on the outside, could be slid into the inside. I mean, it's a roster that still needs some improvement on this offensive line, really at that center and right guard spot. So maybe if you slide him in at right guard, possibly give him a chance there. That's 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen right now. That is a huge improvement to what they had last year. And protecting Rodgers is really going to be their number one priority, because obviously coming off of an Achilles injury, we're not sure how mobile he's going to be. We're not sure how productive he's going to be able to be with his legs. And that's a huge blow to his game and his play style. He does very well getting outside of the pocket, extending plays when they seem dead. That's where the main moneymaker is there with Aaron Rodgers. And so keeping a very solid offensive line, keeping defenders away from him, and allowing him to stay more in the pocket is going to be key for them to have offensive success. And outside of the offensive line, they added a couple more weapons as well. Again, it didn't really seem like they were that prepared. Really, outside of Garrett Wilson, they really didn't have anybody that was very reliable to go out there and be a number one receiver for Aaron Rodgers. They added Mike Williams from the Los Angeles Chargers, who I think could be a perfect number 2 wide receiver. I think he was a great fit as a number 2 wide receiver in Los Angeles, somebody who can play on the outside very well. And next to Garrett Wilson, you now have your top 2 receivers right there that are going to be able to aid Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. And of course, he has Breece Hall behind him, somebody who came on great at the end of the season, was a little bit disappointing for me towards the beginning of the season, but is a very solid pass catching back, speed back, gets out in front of defenders and is able to extend plays. So it's great there. So you have potentially, if you can protect Rodgers, if you can allow him to get to his solid targets, you have a very solid offense. Now, of course, I mentioned right guard as a weakness. I would also mention tight end as a very big weakness for them too right now. I believe they have Jack Conklin there right now at tight end. It's just not something that is very. Just doesn't have the most prestigious amount of talent. He's obviously not a Mark Andrews. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a Travis Kelce. He might not even be Mike Gesicki or a Hunter Henry type of player. He might even be below that, guys. He's an average role-playing tight end. So I think that they do need to improve there, and I would look for tight end to potentially be somewhere where they improve at the trade deadline to try and boost this offense, especially if they are not getting out to a very hot start. But I mean, when you look at the talent of this team, when you look at the fact that they have the 4th easiest schedule in all of the league, really all that they're looking to face is Miami, of course, who they face twice. They start off with San Francisco, but then after that, it's Pittsburgh, Houston, who's solid, but Jacksonville, the Los Angeles Rams, who are okay. It's all these kind of above average teams that they're looking to play this year. So again, it really just comes down to, can you protect Aaron Rodgers? And if they can, with this schedule, I think that they're going to be very successful, as why I have them at 12-5. Moving forward to the Miami Dolphins, who see absolutely no improvement from last year. They end up staying at 11-6, just as they had last year, finishing in 2nd place last year behind the Buffalo Bills on a tiebreaker. They finished 2nd place behind the New York Jets in my prediction. Now, when you look at the Miami Dolphins, they have continued year after year after year to build up and continue to be an offensive powerhouse in the NFL, and they did not falter last year. They were the number 1 total offense in the league last year. They were the number 1 passing offense. They were the number 2 scoring excuse me, sorry. They were the number 2 scoring offense last year. They were the number 2 red zone offense last year. They ranked 1st in yards per game, 4th in passing touchdowns. They protected Tua very well, 28th in sacks allowed. And it is incredible to me that with this offense that they have, with how effective they've been able to be, 70 points on the Denver Broncos in one game last year, that they have not been able to have any playoff success, not making it out of the wild card round. What has been the Achilles heel for them? Defense. Sure, you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Tua. You have Devon Achane now on that offensive side. But the defense has really what has been bringing them down. Now, granted, the defense last year wasn't horrible. It was actually a huge improvement to what they've had in years past. 10th total defense. They were 7th in rushing defense. They were 15th in passing defense. So not horrible, about a top 10 average. Where they gave up their points was in the red zone. 28th ranked red zone defense last year. And really, when you watch them, it almost seemed like they gave up. They just could not hold these teams on the goal line, whether it was holding them to a 1 or 2 yard rushing game to get a touchdown, or simply cutting off a simple crossing, slant, or fade route in the passing game. They gave up a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. And to me, they didn't really have anything to really improve them in that fact. They had to go cheaper when it came to cornerback to go across from Jalen Ramsey. They let go of Xavier Howard. They were able to get Kendall Fuller, somebody who is very, very solid when it comes to man defense. To also cheap out, they let go of Jerome Baker, which was something that was very surprising, but they got Jordan Brooks from the Seattle Seahawks, somebody who I think is a little bit of an improvement, especially for the cheaper price that you get him back. I love Jordan Brooks at linebacker, at rushing linebacker. But outside of that, they lost a lot of depth, especially at that linebacker spot. You lose Jerome Baker. They lost Andrew Van Ginkel. They lost Emmanuel Ogbah, who could play both linebacker and DN. And they lost their big man in the middle. They lost Christian Wilkins. So you look at a team that was 7th in rushing defense, 28th in red zone defense. That means that they were giving up a lot on the goal line. It's going to get even worse for them when you can't plug up that run in the middle. It's going to get even worse for them when you're not going to be able to put pressure on the quarterback when it's 3rd and goal from the 4, 5, 6, 7 yard line. Christian Wilkins was a huge, huge part of that, and it was a big loss. And with them not being able to have a similar linebacker depth, it's really coming down to both Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, that duo who I need to remind you are both coming off of pretty serious injuries from the previous season. Phillips tore his Achilles, and then you obviously had Bradley Chubb tearing his ACL. Chubb has been somebody that has been known to be a little bit injury prone, and behind those two, there's really not much there. I believe they signed Shaq Barrett. They got Shaq Barrett, so is him there. But there's not really much to go off of. And so if you start running into injury problems once again on that defense, your backups are going to begin to let them down. Now, they do have the 8th easiest schedule in the league, so it is a pretty similar schedule to what New York had. You face Jacksonville, Seattle. You have Indianapolis, LA Rams again, Packers, Jets. You have Houston, the 49ers. You have the Cleveland Browns. But notice something all about that. Jacksonville got Trevor Lawrence. You have the Packers. They have Jordan Love. You have the Houston Texans who have C.J. Stroud. Niners who have Brock Purdy. Browns with Deshaun Watson. And notice something else. Jags have Travis Etienne. Packers just signed Josh Jacobs. You have the Jets with Breece Hall. Texans with Joe Mixon. Niners have Christian McCaffrey. Browns have Nick Chubb. You have a lot of teams that have both a solid quarterback and running back duo. That could hurt them. That could hurt them no matter what kind of depth that you have at that wide receiver position. If the run game is able to open up, if the run game is able to be effective when it comes into the red zone, these teams are going to be scoring a lot against Miami. And so I think that they're going to have early success in the regular season just because their offense is going to be scoring. But I think it's another year for them where they're going to come up short against a team that has a very solid defense and a team that is able to do what they want when it comes to getting close to the goal line. So that is stuff that they still need to figure out. It is positions that they still need to get deeper at. I wrote down weaknesses as linebacker depth. They need a tight end as well. Right guard is a little bit of a weakness for them. And mind you, they didn't really have the greatest of drafts. They drafted Chop Robinson out of Penn State with their first-round pick, somebody that I felt was a true developmental pick for them, somebody who is going to be possibly solid for them 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So he's not going to be somebody that is going to be impacting in that linebacker rotation right away either. So they really did not. The Miami Dolphins had never really enforced a winning style mentality when it comes to the offense. They have not looked to get better in the offseason. They have looked to get cheaper, get younger, and continue to build that offense. But the offense can only get so good. You need to start focusing on the defense. I think it's going to be a weakness for them, something that's going to hold them back. It's the reason why I have them behind the Jets, who have both a solid offense and defense, which I think is going to take them farther. Moving on. So we had the New York Jets, who took a +5 win from the previous year. You have the Miami Dolphins staying the same. Now we have a team that's taken a little bit of a step back, and that is the Buffalo Bills. Previously, like I said, went 11-6, won the division last year, have them going 8-8 this year. And to be honest, I think that they could go even lower than that. I could see them going below 500. I could see them potentially falling into 6-10, 5-11 territory if they're not able to get off to a very, very quick start. And the reason being just how many of the big losses that they have and the fact that, similar to Miami, they weren't able to fill these holes. In my opinion, the Josh Allen era is officially over in Buffalo. Now, Allen will continue to be successful statistically, especially with his big arm. He's going to be throwing passes down the field. He's going to be extending plays. He's going to be getting big-time touchdowns and big-time highlights. We know that from him. But as far as the core that surrounded him, as far as a team that has visited the conference finals, the conference championship numerous times, the divisional round numerous times, that core is no longer here. They traded away Stephon Diggs. They let go of their safety duo in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. They lose Gabe Davis, who was somebody who was helping Josh Allen extend plays, somebody who was making up when Stephon Diggs was not showing up. They lost some serious pass rush help, such as Leonard Floyd. They lost Tyrell Dodson and Poona Ford. And they lost veteran center Mitch Morse as well. And what they did is they got kind of above average guys and rookies that I don't really see being able to make a huge impact right away. Curtis Samuel, I think he could potentially fill that Gabe Davis role, but when you're looking at a number one wideout, you don't have that now. You have Curtis Samuel, you have Mac Hollins. They drafted Keon Coleman, who I was just about to get to, I believe in the second round with like the 33rd overall pick. he's somebody that offers some great height, some great physicality on the outside. But do you really think that he's going to be on the level of a Stephon Diggs, even a Gabe Davis in his first year? Don't think that he's going to have that type of production. The offensive line is a little bit weaker for them, so running game is a little bit harder. So as we talked about in last episode with the AFC South, it's going to make Buffalo's offense a lot more predictable. And the schedule that they have is a lot more difficult than what we have seen in the AFC East. 23rd easiest schedule in the league, having to go up against Jacksonville, Baltimore, Houston, Seattle, Kansas City, San Francisco, LA, and Detroit. Some serious defenses. Some teams that also hold some serious firepower. And when you look at the fact that they don't have Tre'Davious White anymore, now they don't have Hyde and Poyer, the passing game is going to be really difficult for this Buffalo team to stop. Especially, it's going to be a big dip-off from what they had last year. 9th total defense, 7th total passing defense. They struggled a little bit on the run. 4th total scoring defense, 4th most sacks, 4th most interceptions. You're not going to be getting those turnovers anymore with the type of players that you have, with the replacements that you made. You're just not. When you don't have Poyer and Hyde, you don't have Tre'Davious White anymore, you're going to take a dip. Those turnovers are not going to happen, which means your offense is not going to have as much opportunities. And I really think that that's what saved Buffalo, is that, sure, maybe there were times where their offense wasn't firing on all cylinders, but the defense just consistently were getting them stops. The secondary was consistently forcing turnovers. And because of that, they got multiple chances to go out and to score, to either take leads or extend leads. And they're not going to have that anymore. And when Josh Allen, we've seen before, when Josh Allen goes into these little dips, when he starts to get into these bad little paths, these bad little stretch of games, it's very hard for him to come out of that swamp. It's very hard for him to get out of that slump, to kind of wake up and get back into the mode he has. And I'm not sure if he has the weapons to get out of those slumps and to begin firing. So again, for Buffalo, it's really going to depend on, can they get off to a quick start? If they could go on and beat Jacksonville, I think that's a very solid win. If they could go on, if they could beat Seattle, if they could just beat these above average teams and begin to build momentum and not fall into these low dips, I think they could be average, above average, maybe even possibly good if they steal a couple of close division games. But outside of that, if they start getting killed early, if Houston ravages them, if Baltimore blows them out, if they get into the later part of the season and San Francisco and Detroit has their way with them, it's going to be a very long season for Buffalo fans, and a complete 180 from what we have seen in previous seasons. Speaking of what we have seen in previous seasons, New England Patriots are not the same team. Let's just say it how it is. The Patriots were not good last year. The Patriots will not be good this year. I have them 1-15, the final team in all of the NFL. And this comes from a team that, like I said, didn't have a very great season last year. They went 4-13. They get 3 less wins. But what I will say about this New England team, while they lack the winning style, while they lack some talent in certain areas, they do have a couple of little gems that I am enjoying. They do have, in my opinion, what could be a starting foundation for a team 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the future that could start contending for a championship. Obviously, losing the greatest coach of all time, that's going to hurt. Whether Bill was doing a great job last season or not, that's obviously going to hurt them. And bringing in a brand new coach who is very young, knows the Patriots way, but is still very young in Gerard Mayo in his first season, there's obviously going to be a different vibe in the locker room. There's going to be a different vibe in the building. And we're going to see an entirely different Patriots team. Whether that's going to be positive or negative, that's entirely up to Gerard Mayo and how the team reacts to his coaching style. But it's going to affect them either way. I think what the key is for New England, I'm going to get right up into my mic right now. The key for New England, do not rush Drake May. I'm going to say it again for the people who didn't hear me in the back. Do not rush Drake May. They signed Jacoby Brissett out of free agency. If Jacoby Brissett has to start for the first 10 to 12 games, that is fine. You are not contending There is no need to put May in early, to put him in with this bad roster, this bad receiving core with a bad offensive line. And there was no need to destroy his confidence early and get him on a bad start to his career. Allow him to sit on the side. Allow him to learn from Jacoby Brissett, who has had some success on some NFL franchises, and allow him to build some starting chemistry with head coach Jerod Mayo, because whether they like it or not, these two are the future. These two are going to have to figure out how to play together, because I'm not sure if the Patriots really have the experience with firing a coach. So if Mayo gets off to a very slow start in his first couple of seasons, I'm not sure if I see them firing him. I think they're going to try to make this work. I think that they're going to try to mold him into something that Bill Belichick was. So whether they like it or not, Mayo and May are the future of this team. They're going to have to work together. So let him have time to develop that. But enough about May. Let's look at some bright spots on this team. First of all, I absolutely love the pairing of Drake May and Jalen Polk out of Washington. I love that pick. Polk is not the most effective route runner, but he has great hands, solid size to be a number 2 receiver in the league, and he's somebody that, once again, gives New England not only a solid foundation, but time to potentially go out and get a number 1 type of receiver. I feel like Jalen Polk can be very similar to the role that Mike Williams plays as a number 2 wideout, being one of the best number 2 wideouts in the league, being somebody that maybe a Chris Godwin, being across from Mike Williams, just being one of the more solid number 2 wideouts. I think he could play that role and give New England that time. And add that on to picking up KJ Osborne from Minnesota, who I felt was super underrated due to having playing behind Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. You have 2 guys in Polk and now a number 3 wide receiver in KJ Osborne, who could be a very great supporting cast once you get that number 1 receiver and once you get a very solid tight end to build a passing attack around Drake May. Then you combine that with other underrated names. They got Antonio Gibson, pass catching back, speed back from Washington, somebody who had a couple of bright spots last season. I think that he is going to serve as a nice speed offset from Ramondre Stevenson, who is much more of a goal line power back. You have Austin Hooper, who they signed, who had some solid seasons with Atlanta a few years back. They drafted Caden Wallace in the 3rd round. I think he's going to be a mid-round steal at tackle. He's somebody that they're going to be able to develop into potentially their next franchise tackle. And defensively, that's going to be New England's strong point. Jerod Mayo is going to make sure that this defense is solid. And you have some solid pieces there, like Devon Godshaw at nose, Matthew Judon, the outside at linebacker, Kyle Duggar and Christian Gonzalez, I love in the secondary. New England has a great foundation to what could be a solid team in a few years. Now, it's going to take some time. They have the 31st easiest schedule, the 2nd hardest schedule in the league, which is why I have them being so low in the wins, facing off against Cincinnati, San Francisco, Houston. They have to go in Chicago, both LA teams. They have to go up against Jacksonville as well. They have to go up against some serious teams. And I think even the lower teams that they play, I believe the only win I have them is because they played Carolina once this year. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. But I think even a lot of the below average teams they're going to really struggle with. I don't think that this offense is going to be very high powering. I think that the defense is going to carry, going to be able to get them some stops here and there. Not going to be consistent when it comes to stops. But I think the offense is going to drag behind, as we have seen in recent years. And with this being a very tough schedule, with it just not being a very talented team, again, it's going to take time. And I say this again, do not rush Drake May. It's going to be an awful season for New England. They're going to only get a handful of wins. You could have 1 win, could see them going winless potentially, anywhere from 0 to 3 wins for New England this year. Don't crush the young man's confidence. Bring him in next year when you have a couple more pieces, when Jerod Mayo has a little bit of coaching experience, when he knows the culture that he wants to bring, and you have a more solid offensive line and a couple more weapons for him. So, just to recap, I have the New York Jets coming in first place in the AFC East at 12-5. I have Miami Dolphins coming in second at 11-6. I have the Buffalo Bills in third at 8-8, and I have the New England Patriots as the worst team in the league at 1-16. And just to put this into perspective, because I haven't talked about this much in the other previews, New York and Miami I have in the playoff picture for me right now. When you add that on to both the AFC West and AFC South that we've done, I have the Texans making the playoffs. I also have the Chargers and Chiefs making the playoffs. So far you have a playoff of the Chiefs at number 1. You have the Texans at number 3, Jets at 4. You have the Chargers at 5 and the Dolphins at 7. Try and guess who's at 2 and 6. That's going to be for the next episode when we go over the AFC North. But those are my current playoff teams. That's all for me today, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Again, if you are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, share it with your friends. Get the episode out there. Get the podcast out there. Let's make this thing big. I've been having so much fun making these episodes. Hope that you guys have had a lot of fun watching it. And please feel free to follow all the social medias. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of the ads will be below in the description, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify/Apple Podcast. TikTok is official play-by-play. Instagram is play-by-play_podcast. And the Twitter is play-by-play_pod0. And with that, I'm Diego Gallegos. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.